We all say that BeamNG is a CPU-heavy game. But what does it mean exactly? It's not like BeamNG comes and physically sits on your processor. How many calculations BeamNG performs each second that makes it one of the most CPU-demanding games in the world? How does it compare to any other games? And does it vary depending on your CPU architecture? Well, in this video, we are going to find out. Let's just launch the game and see what CPU load it will create from the start. Get acquainted with the setup. On the top right, you can see my CPU stats per core. On the bottom right, I have a resource monitor. It will be useful to see how much load BeamNG specifically puts on my CPU. And on the left, we will have BeamNG itself. On my processor, with hyperthreading enabled, we have 8 physical cores split into packs of 2, so that is 16, and also 12 logical cores, which in total gives us 28 cores. And I hope that's how they are aligned. First 16 are physical cores with their hyper-threaded partners, then 12 logical. So, with some more cars spawned, we can see a slight bump of usage on some of the cores. Let's identify which ones are responsible for physics simulation. These pairs are definitely hard workers. They are almost constantly at 100% load, even when I pause the simulation. Most probably, they are responsible for the graphical part of the game. UI, draw calls, I/O operations probably included, this kind of stuff. But which core is responsible for physics? Well, in the current setup, there is not just one. There are 6. 6 physical cores managing physics simulation. And then there are also 6 logical cores helping out. So, in the current setup, every physical core is actually working. 2 managing the graphical part of the game, the other 6 managing physics. Also, physical cores keep exchanging loads with hyper-threaded counterparts. Fair share of workload, huh? As later we will find out, BeamNG manages cores load dynamically, depending on the scenario in the game, but that's further in the video. Now look at how I identified those. We can pause simulation in game by pressing G on the keyboard, and doing this repetitively creates a spiky pattern on the cores load graph. You can check out what cores are used for physics simulation on your CPU by doing the same thing. So we've now seen how BeamNG CPU load looks from the graphs perspective. Now let's move on to the numbers perspective. So my plan is to estimate the number of calculations done each second on one car and then generalize it for the game overall. We don't know much about the source code of BeamNG, but we know that physics is based on knots and beams. Beams act like springs and dampers between two knots. Their job is to detect whether knots are being stretched or squashed together. Knots are deterministic points. They have their weights and constantly monitor their position in space. That being said, this function is the core of BeamNG. It is the main physics operation and it forms a majority of all calculations performed in the game. So, how does 1 second in the life of a BeamNG node look like? First of all, BeamNG runs at 2000 Hz. That means that it recalculates nodes positions each half of a millisecond. To give you a comparison, this is how a Minecraft at this tick level would look like. To understand the scale better, I wrote simplified BeamNG physics simulation in 2 dimensions. Every half of a millisecond, each node asks itself about its position in space. Then it passes this information along to the physics engine. Physics engine takes this info from 2 nodes and checks if their relative positions have changed. If it is so, beam connecting them starts moving. It has to calculate how much it was stretched and then pull back depending on its stiffness. It can also push back depending on its damping parameter. Although the spring part may be obvious, the importance of the damping part can be underrated. So here is an example of how dumping looks like in action. The spring may push outwards, but there is nothing to pull it back in place. Without this, BeamNG vehicles would look like wobbly jelly. And yeah, there are also the triangles, which are very important for collision detection and aerodynamic simulation. My simulation doesn't include those, it is just an approximation. Also, my program doesn't return calculations exactly, so I went line by line through simulation's logic to count every addition, multiplication and square root the CPU has to perform for a single physics step. By the way, this is a good moment to subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Nothing makes a YouTuber happier than seeing those numbers roll. Thank you. In the simulation you see we have only 5 nodes and 6 beams. And this incredibly simple setup produces 130,000 calculations each second. Now let's look at the average car in BeamNG, how many beams and nodes it has. It is hard to say for sure, because each car is separated on plenty of J-beam models, but on average it is 800 nodes, 4000 beams, which will give us 316 million calculations each second. Just for one car, just for 1 second, with no aerodynamics and triangles included, only springs physics. If you were to try simulating 1 second of BeamNG by yourself, this would take you approximately 400 years. So why does every other sane car game avoid this? Because, as you can see, it's a computational nightmare. In a game like GTA 5 or Watch Dogs, the car is essentially a high-speed brick. To the physics engine, it's just a few vectors and a simple bounding box. If you hit a wall, the game plays a crunch sound, spawns some particles, and swaps the car model for a damaged version. A few hundred calculations in total. Even Assetto Corsa, a dedicated racing sim, treats the car body as a rigid object to save resources for aerodynamics and tire simulation. But BeamNG, it doesn't cheat. It is meticulously calculating every car piece vibrating or falling off. It's the difference between drawing a car crash and actually simulating one. But here is the kicker. BeamNG isn't just a physics sandbox, it's a full game. While your CPU is struggling through millions of beam calculations, it's also handling the traffic AI, the draw calls, the UI and the sound engine. It's a massive juggling act. Usually, developers optimize games by using tricks, like not calculating things you can't see. But can you actually optimize BeamNG? In a normal game, if a car is far away, you replace it with a low poly model. Easy. But in BeamNG, if you simplify the structure too much, the beams lose their mathematical stability and the car essentially vibrates itself apart. Since the core physics math is hard to cheat, BeamNG optimizes everywhere else. Traffic vehicles, for example, are hollow, they lack engines and interior details. And they use a secondary, simplified physics skeleton with far fewer nodes than the player's car. But it is still a significant number, so that the physics won't become unstable. Then there is the threading. Seeing the game hit 150 concurrent threads is a massive outlier. For comparison, Far Cry 6 runs on about 70. This high thread count isn't just a random number, it shows that BeamNG is built for task parallelism. Every car is treated as its own separate workload, allowing for game to distribute a massive calculation load across as many CPU cores as you can throw at it. It's brute force physics, but organized. So, we know the math behind it, we know how optimized it is. What do we need to run it as best as possible? As I mentioned before, BeamNG runs an insane amount of threads, and distribution of those among cores is important for game to run smoothly. So, let's compare a CPU with plenty of cores to a CPU with smaller number of cores, and from a different manufacturer. AMD is more single-core performance focused, but its multi-core performance is solid too. Here are detailed specs of CPUs for anyone wondering. The most important part, is that AMD has 6 physical and 12 logical cores, compared to 20 and 28 respectively on Intel. So, which one will run BeamNG better? Also, big thanks to my friend Kivo for help with this test. The AMD side of it was filmed by him. The game is on the medium graphic settings, 1080p resolution. Let's see if there will be a difference in frames and, more importantly, CPU load for 5 cores, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. From the very beginning you can see AMD is using every core available, Intel has twice less load on it and not every core is in use. 10 cores, same tendency. 20 cores, AMD is already on 100% and even more, Intel doesn't care. Yet. 30 cores, the most rapid drop of frames for AMD, and GPU is not the issue. Also, CPU is overclocking itself at this point. Thanks to water cooling, temperature is stable. 40 cores, frames become unplayable on both sides, every core is used on both sides, and Intel's temperature becomes a bit worrying. 50 cores, we are at the point where each CPU is giving its best. Kivo went on exercising his AMD, while I, knowing the background of 14th gen Intels, decided to be more careful. Here are the graphs of compared performance. You can see that AMD dropped performance significantly when the number of cores hit 30. It was using each core available to its max, while Intel was more chill. You can also see that the game doesn't lag more if we are crashing those cores. They are simulated constantly, no matter if you are close or far away. Also, number of threads. AMD has 115, Intel 219. This is an insane difference, and I would love to know what causes it under the hood. It's likely because the i7 has so many background efficiency cores, and the game just keeps spawning extra worker threads to fill them, while the AMD chip has to stay lean and mean. Speaking of under the hood, we were surprised how stable BeamNG is. Well, after I solved some problems on my end. No matter how we tried crashing it, it just kept going, with stable 4 frames per second. Well done. Now you might wonder, why does the physics engine need to calculate all of this 2000 times a second? Your screen is 60 or 144 Hz at best. Your eyes won't see such precision, so why bother? It comes down to stability. Imagine a beam is a spring. If the game only checks its position 60 times a second, a high-speed impact might move a node so far that the spring overstretches before the next calculation. When the CPU finally checks it, the force required to pull it back is so massive that it flings the node to the other side of the map. At 2000 Hz, the steps, or ticks, are so small that the physics engine can catch these movements early, keeping the simulation stable. This high frequency is what allows the cars to feel heavy and real, whilst maintaining this state no matter what you are doing. And even if you slow down time, the simulation still stays at 2000 Hz, allowing for such cool looking smashing precision. But if you will record the replay and slow down time while watching it, you will see how crash physics quality changes. As it was recorded at one rate in real time, if you slow down time, rate is consequently lowered, impacting the simulation. It's like watching a video recorded at one refresh rate, and when slowing it down, rate decreases. By the way, while BeamNG.drive has a fixed update rate at 2000 Hz, BeamNG.tech allows it to be changed to lower or even higher values, depending on the consumer needs. But talking about what BeamNG.tech is capable of is worth a separate video, so let's leave it for the future. As of now, I hope you enjoyed this exploration of big numbers behind BeamNG. Don't forget to like the video, as it significantly pushes it forwards, and see you in the next one.